The star portals are dead. Ship City is dying. But there is still hope. You are explorers in a dangerous world. You do the work few others will. The enigmatic ruins of the Great Dark are shunned by most, but not by you. You seek them out, to delve into their shadowy depths and uncover their secrets. The Blight, the cataclysmic scourge that spreads from the ruins, is your beacon. Where there is Blight, there are artifacts to find and mysteries to solve. Ship City is fading, but you and your fellow explorers can find a way to a better home. So don your Delver suit, step aboard a mighty Greatship, and venture down the Slipstream toward the unknown. Your creed? Explore or perish. This is a review of Coriolis, the Great Dark. Let's dive in. And here we are. This is Coriolis, the Great Dark, although this is the special edition cover. This is the next iteration of the Year Zero engine, ? It's kind of been a long time in getting to this point, but is this really the second edition? And are there enough changes from the third horizon? That's kind of really what this video is kind of about. So first, we're going to have an overview where I go through the character creation process, the gameplay, and all of the GM tools, and my review, my thoughts, will be at the very end. For now, let's go ahead and pop this open to character creation. If you've ever played a Year Zero engine game from Free League, especially its most recent iterations, such as the Electric State, then you already know the basics of creating a character. If I was going to rate the difficulty of creating a character in Coriolis the Great Dark, I would definitely give it an easy difficulty. You choose several options and mash them up into your character, and you do have attribute points to spend, but everything is laid out for you for the most part. So what are the actual steps to creating a character? Well, you get to roll or choose your origin and take its talent. You choose a profession, which is a common staple amongst Free League games. You're going to roll or choose your specialty and take its talent. Distribute 24 points on your 6 attributes, which will kind of help you calculate your health, hope, and heart scores. Then you're going to distribute 3 additional talent points, which is something that's been fairly new with the most recent iterations of any Free League game. Then you're going to roll or choose a quirk, roll or choose your equipment and keepsake, roll or choose your name and appearance, roll or choose the reason you became an explorer. You're going to assemble your crew and give it a name, note your crew maneuvers, get equipment from Explorers Guild, choose your bird type and note its powers, and then choose your shuttle and rover. And I will say that the last 5 steps you're going to do with the rest of your gaming group, because it's really about your party and your role within that party. So let's go ahead and move on to the origins. And the origins, there's quite a bit here. And really what it comes down to is, where do you want to come from and what talent are you going to get for it? You do have an associated faction, which you can roll for or come up with your own. And then you have like a contact that you can call upon in certain situations and things like that. But really, for the most part, if you're wanting to play an origin thematically or narratively, then you're going to have to look in the actual lore chapter for what any of this means. For example, you have things like the decrepit halls of an orphanage, or the depths of the mining colony, under the sunless sky of the far colonies, among the alleys and shanties of Aluminum Bay. So you got weird things like that, but you also have some things that kind of make sense that are generic enough to where you can work with it if you don't know what you're doing or what any of it really means. There are 8 different professions to choose from, and this is a common staple among Free League games, or at least with the Year Zero engine. And you get things like sample names, a key attribute, which in character creation terms means you can actually have a 5 in that attribute. We have some key talents that you can choose from, and then you have some starting equipment. What is kind of fairly new in this iteration are specialties, and there are 6 specialties for every profession. So, for example, for the artist, we have things like the Hull Painter, and they get a free talent, 0G training, or the Staircase Poet, which has the free talent Charmer. So yes, your specialties are thematic and narrative, but you also do get something in return. So we do have things like the Artist, the Enforcer, the Esoteric, the Odd Jobber, the Roughneck, the Scholar, the Scoundrel, and the Traveler. And once again, each profession has a key attribute and some different talents to kind of point you towards what they're good at or what their whole shtick is. Now, just like with any other Year Zero engine game, we do have 6 attributes, which are Strength, which is your raw muscle power and brawn. We have Agility, which is body control and speed. We have Logic, which is intelligence and power of deduction. We have Perception, which is awareness and vigilance. We have Insight, which is mental stability and intuition. And we have Empathy, which is charisma and manipulation of others. Now, when you're distributing your attribute points, you have a minimum of 2 for each attribute, and it can go all the way up to 5 for your generic attributes. For your key attribute, you can actually go all the way up to 6. And 3 of these attributes will actually help you with your health, hope, and heart. So health represents your vitality and stamina. Hope represents your resolve and willpower. And hope is degraded by despair. Heart represents your humanity and clarity of mind and is degraded by Blight, which is a new damage type for this game. And then we have a whole list of talents. So the new thing in Free League games is we don't have an attribute and a stat anymore. We simply have a list of attributes, and we have a lot of talents that can slightly increase your attribute score in certain situations. For example, Blade Fighter here, you get +1 die per talent level to close combat rolls when fighting with blade weapons like swords, knives, and axes and spears. Or we can have things like the Charmer. You get +1 base die per talent level when rolling for empathy to make an NPC like you. So it's not just a straight up bonus for an attribute, it's an upgrade to an attribute in certain situations if you meet the criteria, which I really do like. So we have different talents for combat, social, vehicles, and exo talents, knowledge, insight, equipment, recovery, stealth and mobility, and resilience. And there's a lot here. So it never really feels like there's not a whole lot to choose from and everybody's kind of doing the same thing. In addition to creating a character, you and the other players will also solidify your crew. Why are you working together? What are your roles within this crew? And speaking of roles, every character has a role to play in the crew. So you have the Delver, who leads the way down into the ruins, choosing paths through the dark. You have the Scout, who scouts ahead, discovering the dangers hidden in the distance. You have the Burrower, who digs through and secures paths in the caves and tunnels of the ruins. You have the Guard, who protects the crew against any adversaries the Great Dark can throw at you. And then you have the Archaeologist, who knows how to understand the ruins, monuments, and glyphs. Basically, your know-it-all scientist guy. To go along with a role, you have a team maneuver, or special training that they'll get from the Explorers Guild, and can only be used once in an engagement. So we'll have things like Analyze, so you or another explorer in the same zone get +2 base dice for 1 attack on a specific enemy. And, well, I'm just going to throw this out there. There's a lot to choose from, although they are categorized by Delver, Scout, Burrower, Guard, and Archaeologist. So just like with talents, you have something additional to kind of help you out when you're exploring. In addition to having a crew, you also get a bird. This bird is probably the most important thing you're going to own or take with you because it protects you from the Blight. There are 3 different types of birds that you can, take with you. The ward type of bird is a protector of the group with an affinity for attack powers. We have the Guide, which are primed to search, find, and scan ahead. And the least common of birds is the Spectre, which has a rapport with the minds of other creatures. And your birds have powers too. They have basic generic powers such as attack, defend, clear blight, blight scan, soak blight, and glow. But then there are advanced bird types, and some of them are very specific to the type of bird that you have. For example, illusionary veil can only be used by guide type birds. The bird creates an illusionary veil, hiding one explorer from sight, even from scanners. Extra successes means one more explorer in the zone is hidden. The effect lasts for one stretch. And of course, it does give you a sample of what it would look like when the bird uses that power. The last thing that you'll do with your crew is choose your rover and shuttle. So our rovers are ground vehicles, and there's 3 to choose from, like the Rhino all-terrain rover, the Crocodile tracker rover, or the Sphinx gravity projection rover, which can hover over difficult terrain. And then we have shuttles, which are what you fly around in, such as the grasshopper, the owl, and the manta. And I will go ahead and throw this out here. You don't really have a ship capable of FTL flight. Instead, you charter flights on these big, gigantic ships, and that's what's able to go through the Slipstream. And that's really how you get around in the galaxy. It's really strange like that, but then again, it fits the whole theme that you're exploring an unknown region of space here, and you're kind of trapped here. Anyways, let's go ahead and move on to gameplay. Rolling dice in Coriolis is just like any other Year Zero engine game. Not a whole lot has changed there. Take the relevant attribute score, roll that many number of d6s, and roll. You need at least 1 6 to succeed. Sometimes your gear will add bonus dice. If you don't succeed, you can push the roll in most situations. That means you take all the dice that did not come up as a 1 or a 6 and re-roll them. Now, if you roll a 1 on your base dice after the reroll, then you lose 1 point of hope. If you roll a 1 on your gear dice after the reroll, the gear bonus on that piece of gear is reduced by 1. If the piece of gear is reduced to 0, then it is broken and needs to be repaired. Certain rolls in the game, such as armor rating rolls or effects during a delve when the explorer is exposed to horrifying events, cannot be pushed. A roll can only be pushed when the explorer actively performs an action, and that's very important to remember. Sometimes certain tasks will be harder. The GM can modify these dice by adding or taking away dice. Other explorers can help out on a task, or at least up to 3 explorers can, for a +1 modifier each. When the going gets tough, it's time for combat. Usually. Initiative is done using a deck of cards, 1 through 10. The number you draw is your order in combat. It's that easy, and it's a staple of Free League games. Some creatures have a ferocity score. This is how many cards for initiative they can draw. If one side gets the drop on another, as in a surprise, then they get to take any card for initiative that they want. It's also possible to hold off on any action on your turn. This means you can swap initiative cards with anyone going after you. On your turn, you can perform 1 maneuver and 1 action. We have free actions, which don't count as your actions in the round, but you can only do them on your turn, such as draw weapon, change position, drop equipment, shout, and perform a maneuver. Or rather, a maneuver for your crew roll. And then we have our actions, such as a close combat attack or a ranged weapon attack. You can throw a weapon, you can reload, administer first aid, decontaminate, persuade, run. Blocking and dodging are reactions, but you can't use an action if you use those. So if you've already used an action on your turn and it's still the same round and somebody tries to attack you and you want to use one of those, well, you can't unless you have some sort of a talent that allows you to do so. And that really incentivizes if you want to be aggressive, attacking, or if you want to be defensive. Anyways, we have grapple attacks. You can pick up equipment or use equipment. You can aim, or you can command your bird. If you're in possession of it, that is. Now, the battlefield is separated into different ranges. So we have engaged range, which is right next to you, short range, which is in the same zone, medium range, which is in an adjacent zone, long range, and then extreme range. So nothing really new here as far as the Year Zero engine is concerned. When you fight against other NPCs or human foes, it's pretty straightforward. When beasts and other creatures are involved, you'd best watch out. One of my favorite gameplay mechanics is returning. Signature attacks. You see, whenever a beast attacks, it uses a signature attack. You roll a d6 to see what attack it uses. Not all attacks deal damage, and some attacks are quite lethal. This has always been a staple in Free League games since Alien, and this really makes solo play exciting and, to be honest, viable. There are 3 types of harm: damage for health, despair for hope, and blight for heart. When you suffer damage from an attack, armor will be there to protect you. Simply roll the number of gear dice for your armor and any dice for cover. Every 6 rolled prevents 1 damage. If your health drops to 0, then you are broken. That means you crumble to the ground and can only mumble and crawl away from danger. Take any more damage after being broken, and you get a critical injury. It should be worth mentioning that 2 of the critical injuries are instant death, so be careful. There are 3 ways to recover after being broken, assuming you're not dead. First, someone can help you recover by giving you first aid and rolling for logic. You heal damage equal to the number of successes rolled, and you are no longer broken. Only broken victims can recover health in this way, so don't expect to be healed like every time you take a little bit of damage. A Medidose can automatically heal health if you are broken without a roll, or on your own, which is the least viable method. If no one is around to help you, you automatically heal 1 point of damage after 1 shift has passed and you are no longer broken, assuming you're not going to die before that happens. When your hope reaches 0, you are broken by despair. You can make 1 move per round, but not perform any actions. You also suffer a mental trauma. Immediately roll on the table here, and any further despair while already broken has no effect. Like with health, there are 3 ways to recover when broken by despair. Someone else can help you by talking to you and rolling for empathy. You can take some drugs, or you can do it on your own. That means you recover 1 point of hope after 1 shift. When your heart reaches 0, you are broken by blight. You can make 1 move per round, but not perform any actions. You also suffer a blight manifestation, so you're going to roll that on the chart. These are like semi-mutations. They're really interesting, but oh well. There are only 2 ways to recover from being broken by blight. First is decontamination, so someone can help you by decontaminating you. This counts as an action for them and it requires a logic roll. Or you can do it on your own, so you automatically recover 1 point of heart after 1 shift has passed. That is, if you're in a blight-free area or in a delve camp. Now, the crew has access to a ship, and thus ship combat can be a thing. Now, your vehicle has some attributes such as maneuverability, speed, hull, armor, passengers, cargoes, any upgrade slots, and actual upgrades that are already installed. Now, if you're in combat, you can take actions with your vehicle. You can speed up, which means you do 2 maneuvers in a round. You can fire a mounted weapon, deploy countermeasures, you can ram against something, you can perform some kind of a stun or overload, you can perform field repair or a sensor sweep or dock with another ship or something like that. And of course, if your vehicle gets damaged to the point that you receive a critical injury or critical vehicle damage, there is a table to roll for on that. Now, chases aren't anything special in the Great Dark. In fact, I've seen a lot better in other Free League games, such as Blade Runner. But simply put, all participants make an opposed agility roll. If the runner extends their range beyond extreme, then they get away. If anyone catches up to them, then they can perform an action to stop them, and that's kind of about it. The new thing in Coriolis is the Delve. These allow the crew to explore ancient ruins abandoned long ago by the builders. As they search through these ruins, they will have to contend with beasts and the Blight. Delves are separated into different zones or markers. Traveling between markers takes a stretch of time, but more importantly, will cost the crew 1 supply, assuming you're not going in blind. If the explorers start running low on supplies, it's time to get back to safety as quickly as possible. Each time the explorers are required to spend a point of supply but have none left, they will suffer damage, despair, or blight. Basically, you get to roll a d6 for each explorer and compare the results to a table. Armor and blight protection have no effect for this. If broken by damage when out of supply, an explorer will die the next time another supply point should be spent. So yeah, take as much food and batteries for your lighter as you need. And really, going on a delve is about juggling your supply and making sure you have enough for the journey back. Because remember, if you backtrack, you're also going to spend a point of supply. Of course, you and your crew won't go in blind, right? You can use a scanner to get a deep scan of the delve area. And then there's the Blight. Your bird can help scan for areas with Blight. This results in pinging your map with any Blight cores. That's where the Blight is heaviest. Or any Blight oasis, which is an area devoid of Blight. Some delves will take days, and in such cases, you may need to make camp. So you're going to roll for logic and spend one supply to make a camp. But the cool thing is, if you're successful, the crew spends one supply for an entire shift. Just make sure your camp is well protected. Let's talk about creating delves, since that is the big new mechanic for Coriolis. As a GM, you're in charge of creating these ancient ruins. But worry not, there is a process. You can roll to determine the shape and function of key locations and any discoveries and any threats and creatures that are in said structure. And for the final touches, you can put it all together by drawing a map with entrances and other key locations. There are a lot of different tables to kind of help you out if you're running low on ideas. Just remember that as a GM, combat in Coriolis is quite dangerous, so not every key location should have combat. You should definitely do like a mix of different encounters. Speaking of enemies and other things to fight, there are 4 categories of enemies for the crew to go up against. We have blight beings, constructs, beasts, echoes, and then adversaries. Although there are also phenomena to throw in there to kind of spice things up. Adversaries are your normal human characters. So you only get stats, talents, and equipment. But there is a variety to utilize, and really, these would start as your base for your building blocks. The beasts are another thing entirely. And there is some variety to get you started. No doubt that as adventures are published, more will come out. But for blighted beings, we have things like the blight crawlers, the fallow bloom, the Quani bird, the snake vine. So just different things that your crew can go up against. They really don't mean a whole lot unless you've encountered them before. For constructs, we have things like cinderfish, gargantuans, the glyph golem, sentry hounds. For beasts, we have the hefog, the Nekatra, the ship mites, and the Slipstream Nieba. And for echoes, we have the wraithlight, conduit specters, and the Hobriok bird. And for phenomena, we have things like the blight barnacles, brittle storm, fire meteoroids, gas cloud, gravity crevasse, gravity tide, grit tornado, and light blaze. Also sinus storm, time field, and toxic fog. So I really like that there's a lot of different phenomena. I kind of wish there were more beasts and things like that to go up against, but what we have is a start, I guess. Aside from enemy stats and whatnot, there is a lot of advice for GMs. Even if you're experienced with playing the Third Horizon, it's still worth a read through because, while the 2 games are very similar in terms of gameplay, their themes are quite different. The Great Dark is about exploration and what seems like a hopeless situation, but it is that hope the crew and really the rest of the Corionites cling on to. It's what drives them. You see, a couple centuries ago, a group of people found their way to Jumua, but it wasn't quite what they had hoped for. Old rivalries soon plagued progress, but eventually the people had enough. They threw away the old regime and the guilds formed. A new way to travel was eventually discovered, which allowed travel outside of the system on massive ships. And while they explored outside the systems, they built a massive ship city. There's quite a bit of detail for this ship city, but also for the other areas or planets that you could possibly go on to. I think the weirdest aspect of the whole universe that they've presented here is that you really don't have a ship to go around and visit other systems and planets and things like that. Like, yes, you do have a shuttle, but that's not going to get you across the galaxy. Instead, you have these massive ships. I kind of always thought it was like a cruise ship, but in space. So you're taking this massive ship to get from one location to another, because FTL or hyperspace, as you might have known it from the Third Horizon, doesn't really exist out here. Here's your obligatory spoiler warning. The Black Ziggurat is the introductory adventure for Coriolis the Great Dark, so if you plan on playing through this adventure, either solo or with a gaming group, turn back now or be lost to the Blight forever. The Black Ziggurat takes place in the year 189. The explorers are asked to investigate the disappearance of the navigator Sirhat, who was reported missing in the vicinity of an old builder ruin on the moon Azeroth in the Gamaru system. After arriving, they will find the navigator shuttle crashed into the forest near the ancient ruin, the Black Ziggurat. They will need to investigate the shuttle and find a way into the Ziggurat to locate the missing navigator. Their mission is to bring back the navigator, if possible. And if not, they are to locate and retrieve his guild bracelet for further investigation back in Ship City. The Black Ziggurat serves as a delve for the crew to embark on. If an explorer manages to succeed on a scan, they can discover 3 ways of getting in: topside, side tunnel, or the hidden entrance used by the Black Toad. It's a pretty straightforward delve with hidden dangers and encounters. That is, until they get to the deep chamber. There, they find the navigator Sirhat, or at least a replica of him. You see, in creating a drug, the Black Toad awakened a Khazram, or a growth that the builders created to combat the Blight, but it became twisted. With it awakened, it cloned what was left of the Black Toad survivors, and the navigator Sirhat wants to escape and spread itself, and it's kind of up to the crew to stop it. As far as introductory adventures go, I think this one succeeds at what it's trying to do, and that's to ease players into the delve mechanics, because that's the big new thing here. There are some dangers to go through in terms of combat, so it's not just, environmental situations that you're going to go up against, so I am thankful for that. Now, on the other side, while not exactly something for the GM's toolbox, we have solo rules. But it's kind of nailed to a region called the Red Garden. Although not really, because you can just take these rules and apply them anywhere if you really want to. The solo rules themselves are akin to what we got in Dragonbane. You create your solo explorer and power them up quite a bit. They get like 20 extra XP, an extra d6 times 500 Rook, which is your currency, 28 attribute points instead of 24, 3 crew maneuvers to use at any given time, although you can swap them out when you're resting, a bonus bird power, and a Blight Scar. And the Blight Scar is something that's new. Basically, it's just like an extra detail that makes your character unique, although it doesn't really add any gameplay mechanics itself. So there is that. To help create your delve, there are a variety of tables to roll on. Although my favorite method is still going to be to use the Game Master's Emulator 2nd Edition to help flesh out Avengers and for Oracle tables. I will put the Black Ziggurat delve and the solo rules for The Great Dark to the test in their own videos on Example of Play, so check out those videos when they are released in the upcoming weeks. Anyways, let's get to my final thoughts. Alright. So, what exactly do I like about Coriolis the Great Dark? Well, the setting. I've always had this thing for stranded in deep space type settings, kind of like Mass Effect Andromeda. In fact, I would say this is the Mass Effect Andromeda of the whole Free League games library. The downside is it kind of erases a lot of the rich history that fans of the Third Horizon have come to really love or expect. We're starting fresh here for better or for worse. I personally don't find any problem with this because I've not played the Third Horizon nearly enough to become attached to it. And also, I really like the whole stranded in deep space setting. I kind of like the system. As I've been doing these reviews and solo plays of the Free League games, I've come to the realization that I have this love, not love so much relationship with them. And a lot of my issues stem from the earlier iterations of the Year Zero engine. I like how refined the system has become up to this point. Pushing is far more valuable here because you are potentially rolling less dice on a consistent basis. Or at least that's what it feels like to me. This is due to the talent system that Free League has implemented in the Year Zero engine. You don't have two stats anymore, an attribute and a stat. You have an attribute and a talent that might grant you like a +2 bonus in certain specific situations. And I like that. Then there are the beasts and their special actions. And this has always been that one thing that I always crave when I come back to these Free League games. It's that special sauce on top of a main dish that I just really, really like. And it makes solo play much more manageable too. Now, what am I mixed on? The solo rules. I'm just not a really big fan of the actual make your character uber powerful just so they can survive aspect of it. But I really do like the tools that are at your disposal for playing solo. I just kind of wish that they had expanded it to, other settings or other planets, but that's an easy fix. So it's not really that big of a deal. I'm not really sold on delving. And this is the big new mechanic for the system. And it's where the Great Dark really stands out from the Third Horizon. I don't really have anything against the rules and the gameplay itself, other than that it can seem more like a board game at times. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. My main issue comes with, what do you do if you don't want to make the campaign, the main spark of the campaign, about delving? Or even start off as part of the Explorers Guild? Well, unfortunately, there's not really much else, and certainly not a distinction from the Third Horizon. If you're not into the whole aspect of exploration and dungeon crawling and whatnot, then there really isn't much here to warrant an upgrade from the Third Horizon. I'm not really sold on chases in this book, and that's only because I know they can do so much better. Like, Blade Runner still has the best chase rules in my opinion. I'm not really sold on the art. Ooh. This one's going to be a hot take because I'm really into Martin Grip's artwork and his art style, but the biggest issue for me is that the Creatures and Adversaries chapter is devoid of such art for most of it. Show me art of all of this cool stuff here, not just pieces that look like they belong in some generic sci-fi setting. All right, what don't I like? Ship combat. I mean, I'm very thankful that it isn't alien level of ship combat, but still, it just, I don't know. I've never really found a system that absolutely nails ship combat yet, and Coriolis leaves something to be desired. That's just the way it is. At the end of the day, the big question is, should you get the Great Dark if you already have the Third Horizon? Or even, which book should you get if you don't have either? And the answer really comes to what your preference in themes are. Do you like playing in a universe already defined by rich cultures and histories? Or do you want to play in a universe that's got a lot to be explored for? Do you like playing in a universe full of hope or despair? If you already have the Third Horizon, do you want to add delving to your games? Because really, that's the biggest addition that separates the two for me. If you're not interested in that aspect of the game, then there's really no point to getting the Great Dark. For me, as a solo player, the delving rules just seem a little stale. Like, as I was playing through it in my example of play, the second playthrough, where it was actually true solo, I was just going through the rigmarole of rolling the dice and then subtracting numbers for my character, and nothing was really happening. Or at least until the end when I met those NPCs. Now, granted, if I was a GM running this game for a group and things were getting a little stale and we needed to pick me up, I could definitely add some things to kind of add some intrigue or some danger or just some excitement to the game. And I guess, in a way, I could do that as a solo player as well if I was using other mechanics, maybe like GME 2nd edition or something like that. Would I run this for my gaming group? If I had to choose between the Great Dark and the Third Horizon, I would probably go with the Great Dark because that's really up my alley. Again, I like Mass Effect Andromeda. That is the best game in the series. Come fight me, bro. But, I like that aspect. I like having that sandbox of me being able to do whatever I want and making changes to, you know, factions and cultures and things like that. And I can, you know, set up a campaign my way without having to worry about, am I bumping into, you know, what's already stated. Not that you should ever be, because at the end of the day, you're the GM and you can do whatever you want. But in the back of my mind, that's always my thought process. But anyways, that's going to do it for this review. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Give this video a huge thumbs up to support the series, and I will see you guys in the next video.